learning every day. An open mind can unlock any door. Maybe you just want to know the score. Log on. SaintKermit.com. Patron saint.
Welcome, folks. It is now the official first episode of the revamped 2016 St. Kermit. It's almost, but not quite like Bloom County 2015, but hopefully we'll get there. Tony,
We're back.
We're back, and hopefully better, maybe slightly grayer than ever, but we are in fact back. Good to see you, Tony.
Thanks, you too, Jim. Here we go again. Let's do this.
Let's do this thing. So we have a lot of things we're going to talk about during this campaign season. But what we're going to start off this first episode is the topic of journalism, journalistic integrity, and things like that nature, because journalists, perhaps even like us, I think have a real important role in the election campaign. And we've seen some really interesting things pop up recently, perhaps most notably in the short term, the recent Commander-in-Chief Forum, supposedly moderated by Matt Lauer. And we're not going to hear to rehash all the things that, all the critiques of of how he ran the forum.
Of which there were many.
But really want to touch upon the issue of how good our journalists are today. So I'm sure you have a couple thoughts here. I know I do. But Tony,
so the aftermath of this, like you said, isn't so much Matt Lauer, but it's more, what are we expecting of journalism? And does journalism, as those of us of a certain age have come to know it or used to think about it, even really exist anymore? We used to be in a place where part of the role of the press, the media, was to give a critique of what was going on in the news and say, hey, this is so, maybe that's not so. Some people think this, we haven't heard this viewpoint. And yes, we've always had, editorial bias, and the way we approach views would be different. But I think we're now in a place where it seems like this is not even the expected role of the press or media anymore, to do real thoughtful critique and commentary or fact-checking. It seems their only role has become, and increasingly becomes, just to present a platform for people to say their piece. The Matt Lauer lack of moderation being our most recent, most glaring example, that it is not their job to say, well, this is generally considered to be not true. In fact, we can prove this is not true. What do you say to that? Absent from our conversations. It's a joint media appearance, not a debate. We've known that for a long time, but now we're even losing the pretense that there will be some kind of officiating or watching the line to see if that line of complete falsehood and outright blatant lying is crossed. And doesn't seem like it's there anymore, nor does it seem like anybody intends it to be. That's not the purpose anymore.
We look back 4 years ago, there was the debate between Obama and Mitt Romney where Candy Crowley came out and actually did a little bit of fact-checking in the middle of the debate, and there's a little bit of criticism as to whether or not that should be her role. Mm-hmm. And so I would sit here and say, yes, of course. And just to be clear, the fact-checking that any journalist should go through, whether it's in a debate or a forum or what have you, needs to be even-handed. This is not just hey, I'm a progressive, whatever, we'll have kid gloves on Hillary, but we got to fact-check Donald Trump to the end. No, we need to fact-check everybody here to make sure that the American public gets the benefit of what the truth is, and particularly in an era where I'm afraid that there are too many people who just don't care what the truth is.
Mm-hmm. I think the further we get away from doing the fact-checking and the honest critiquing, the less it seems to be needed or wanted, and it's a reinforcing circle that leads us to a place where black is white, night is day, freedom is slavery.
Gee, where have we heard that sort of thing?
I've heard that before.
Well, I think one thing that's an underlying thread you both kind of brushed against tangentially is we have a bigger issue with the idea of false equivalency that has sprung up. the media's job has never been to be quote unquote objective in terms of I'm gonna give the flat earthers 10 minutes just because I give the round earth people 10 minutes. There's been precedent with the BBC where they said we're no longer going to give equal time to people who deny climate change. You people are the equivalent of flat earth. We do not give people who believe in a flat earth 20 minutes because in the name of quote unquote balance or fairness. No, you're an idiot. And that is a really stupid position that's been, scientifically refuted. You do not get nor deserve equal time. However, we've allowed that type of anti-bias bias to creep in through the entire discourse, and this is why we are where we are now, where we have to give silliness and specious arguments equal time, and mostly because of this meme that's been perpetuated for about three plus decades of a quote-unquote liberal media. The media might be more liberal than conservatives would like, but I wouldn't necessarily call the media by and large liberal. Believe me, I remember watching Jesse Jackson constantly get badgered. Well, what do you want, Jesse? Jesse's like, I'm running for president. Nobody else ever got asked that question. He got checked especially hard about facts, about his knowledge base to see if he actually knew what he was talking about. And by the way, go back and look, he did. Whether or not you agree with his politics, he certainly came from an informed basis. Over years, we've seen more and more this liberal media drumbeat hammered in till you almost believe that, you got a bunch of French socialists in the media, and nothing could be further from the truth. But the media has actually ingested that wholeheartedly to the point where they're very nervous about appearing to be, quote unquote, biased in any way, shape, or form. And it's gotten totally ridiculous instead of calling people on it. And you combine that in parallel with the fact that, quite honestly, the Republican Party has become less and less fact dependent, and you've reached a real issue. And by the way, this isn't necessarily a liberal progressive bias. I mean, you've got some pretty reasonable Republicans who look askance at Sarah Palin, Ted Cruz, Rick Perry, people who have increasingly lowered the discourse and dumbed down politics to the point where you have media people who feel compelled to give equal time to, idiocracy. And that has hurt us all. So when you talk about this fact checking, part of the fact checking is, you're picking on people because you're biased. Look, Hillary's been fact checked ad infinitum. It's going to continue. Okay. Right. Mitt Romney got fact checked and people got upset because it was conservative being fact checked. It's sort of the same reason why, there's this whining about, well, why are conservatives fodder for comedians? Well, they make it so damn easy.
now,
and let me point this out. This is one of the things about, Jon Stewart ran into this with The Daily Show, and I actually agree with him. Jon Stewart's favorite punching bag was silliness. If it was conservatives tended to corner the market on the last decade or so, but the media came in for just the same, for an equal amount of abuse because of the tomfoolery that has culminated in Matt Lauer. I mean, I'm still kind of amused that we're all upset about Matt Lauer's performance. I watched him interview Ryan Lochte in the middle of a lie 2 weeks ago, and he didn't handle that very well either. If you can't handle Ryan Lochte, how the hell are you going to handle presidential content?
Stay with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Matt Lauer.
Yeah, I mean, stay in your lane. I mean, stay in your lane and everything's going to be fine. And he got out of his lane and he got justifiably roasted. I just read today, apparently NBC execs agree with the consensus. Imagine that his, the only people, let me put it this way, the only people that are actually supportive of Matt Lauer right now is Megyn Kelly of Fox, and there was one other person, but basically, when those are your friends, you really should look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to take this, before we finish up for this, our first episode here, I want to take this down a slightly different path to tie it into the other interesting hullabaloo that's been getting lots of media coverage and lots of reporting on is the whole issue of athletes protesting at sporting events. Obviously starting with Colin Kaepernick, and now maybe hitting some level of pinnacle if the entire Seattle Seahawks team takes a knee during their game this weekend. And that's sort of an issue that the media, while they handle people with kid gloves and do an awful job in matters of, potentially sort of serious political importance, here the people seem to be going overboard in the critique of this protest. And it's an interesting dichotomy we have, where we have people who will not challenge someone running for president, but oh my God, you're an athlete who won't stand for the national anthem. Well, that's just not right. It's a problem we have here in these, again, this generalistic thing, that the things that are really important we can't do right, and the things that are symbolically important but fit well within one's rights of protest and really, we talk about the rights of American. If you don't want to stand for the national anthem, don't. Yet that's the thing that people are getting excoriated on here.
Well, I'm reminded of that scene in Airplane 2 when, Julie Haggerty is telling the passengers, we're a tad off course. Well, how much is a tad? Oh, it's 250,000 miles in space terms. And what you hear smashing the side of the ship are boulders and asteroids, and both the pilots are incapacitated. And then somebody jumps up and goes, are you telling us everything? Well, we're also out of coffee. Then Bedlam breaks out, right?
Right.
And that's pretty much what we have here. It's like we're out of coffee. Oh my God. Look, full disclosure, I've been black for decades.
Yes.
I have had unofficially 9 run-ins with cops in 4 different states, including 2 or 3 in Massachusetts and New Jersey in my first month. So.
Yeah, the liberal Northeast, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I'm also these may sound disjointed, but believe me, they're all tying together. I never forget Louis Tiant saying that he was a hero in Fenway Park, couldn't get a cab, or would get harassed, 5 blocks from the stadium. So at some point, the comfortable fictions, and that's the coffee. People go to sporting events. They don't care about the boulders smashing into their lives. They don't care about being off course, because, damn it, when I'm in this escapism area, I don't want the real world coming into politics. Well, guess what? For those athletes, the real world still exists.
Yep.
Colin Kaepernick, when he cuts his hair low, he's biracial. And was raised by and adopted by white parents. I dated a girl with the exact same backstory, and it was really fascinating. Talking to her about it, and you come to a certain awakening because you love your adoptive parents, you appreciate the culture, but you also recognize the realities of being considered black, and I put that in air quotes, according to the 1-drop rule, and you can't ignore that, you can't shake that off. Race as a biological construct is bullcrap, and I know this as a scientist. As a social construct, it's real, and it's been real for 4 centuries in this country. Needless to say, I wholeheartedly support Colin Kaepernick. I am blown away by the fact that an entire 53-man roster will potentially stand with him. I've heard conflicting stories onto what type of protest or whether they'll do it. Because if he's done nothing else, he is sure as heck advanced and kept the discussion in the forefront, even though there are people who are willfully trying to blur the distinction. Let's get something straight, and I'm going to not suck all the air out the room. Let's get something straight. Number one, national anthem wasn't even used at sporting events until the 1950s. Commonplace. If you jump in a time machine and watch a baseball game in 1940, there was no national anthem. That was something maybe for a World Series, and then it, started catching on in World War II, became commonplace in the mid-50s. You go to other countries, you go to a World Cup match, they do not play national anthems. You go to Premier League match, they do not play God Save the Queen.
Right.
You'll hear a bunch of drunk yahoos singing the Arsenal fight song or the Man U fight song.
That's
God
right.
bless them. That's
right.
when we
You'll
need to
never
learn.
walk alone at Anfield or something.
Yeah, we need fight songs here in pro sports. I like what the Premier League does. That part anyway. But, so that's 2 things. 3, politics has always been a part of sports. The NFL charges the armed forces millions of dollars to do flyovers and, basically promote and pimp the military. And the military didn't get conflated with the national anthem formally until after 9/11. And 5, the national anthem, you probably know by now, the third verse talks about killing slaves who allied with the British to fight for their freedom.
Yep.
Boy, thank God we don't sing that part of it. And I didn't even know that part until about 6 months ago. And 7, I don't know how many people have said in the past that, and we forget this, in the last, I guess it stopped after 9/11, but a lot of people said, why don't we use God, America the Beautiful, as opposed to the Star Spangled Banner? Since it's a rather militaristic national anthem, let's use something more affirming and positive about America.
Yep.
But, and the final thing I'll say, and then I'll let you guys, take it from here, James Baldwin had the definitive quote on why we protest, which is, I love this country more than any other country, therefore I reserve the right to perpetually criticize it. Accountability for mature people involves loving but firm pointed criticism. If you blow an assignment in sports, your coach jumps down your throat. He doesn't give you butt pats all the time, right? He gets on you so that you correct and you're a better player. This country needs it to become a better country. And for me, this is something I file under the folder in my head called duh. But unfortunately, it's been a struggle discussing this with people at times. I think Jim has seen some of my Facebook posts,
Yep.
and it feels very much like an intervention with a person with a substance abuse problem. They will scream, they will curse you out, they will deflect. Everybody but them is the problem. And then you hope and pray that you have a breakthrough. And I feel like, this country's been going through an intervention, since World War II. Actually, we've had repeated ones. The first one probably was the Civil War. And I think we've been having,
all right. Yeah.
And then we had one, I'd say, from, say, the murder of Emmett Till through the Civil Rights Act, and then the predictable backlash and fatigue. And I think we're going through one now. And, I honestly welcome it. We need it.
Absolutely. Well, let me just tie this in then, Tony. But, this all, I think, ties into what we started off with, is that I think we have, the whole issue of the journalism issue, that whole issue, it turns around whether or not we want the truth. And if people are uncomfortable with the truth, that's one of the issues that Kaepernick has brought to the forefront. And we need people to be uncomfortable with the truth. And it would be great if our journalists would have the guts to say we're seeking out the truth, not just allowing a platform for people to say whatever they want to say.
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. You're absolutely right with that, Jim. My question is, does it make good economic sense to do it that way? Isn't that what this comes down to?
A fine question, and perhaps for another discussion here. The economic impact. Tony, why don't you finish up here so we can put this to bed for this week?
I love, George, your comment about the liking our problem with dealing with institutional racism and the absence of intellectual fact-checking with the addiction issue, because it really is very obvious that we are in a place as a culture where, we've been told we have a problem, we've been sent to various programs to try and get better, we don't really want to, and it seems like the culture is now in a place like, oh crap, you mean we really got to quit and do something different? I don't want to, so no. And we're in that battle and struggle right now, and I think everything we've talked about today is, evidence to that.
All right, with that note, we've been here for longer than we expected, and maybe we'll go this long every week, folks. If you're still watching, we're so grateful that you stayed on with us. We're going to have lots of fun things to talk about, lots of hopefully provocative things to talk about as we get St. Kermit back up and running. George, next week we definitely want to see your face for radio. And
I'll have a haircut by then. You got
fantastic.
It. Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure.
We have placated the white fragility by not showing everyone George this week.
There you go.
Exactly. But we will lift that veil next week. Gentlemen, It's great to have you on here. Great to be back doing this. And we will see you all next week.
Been real.
Yeah.
Deuces.